All right, so we have a collective message. We are going to be talking about sensory overload and why this is so important, especially in this day and age, and a more practical way to get to the root issue of it, or to be more aware of how to fix the issue. I'm going to talk about more of my experience with it, what happens. Not only, what it says and what it is, but what I actually experience, and how emotional awareness, body awareness, all sorts of kinds of awarenesses are entailed, but you are able to really pull yourself out of a lot of negative thinking and patterns and ways of being. But let me start here. So sensory overload is when your five senses, light, sound, taste, touch, and smell, but there's much more than that, take in more information than your brain can process at one time. Because we're not meant to take in insurmountable, information coming from here, coming from there, coming from every which way, sound, overstimulation in so many different ways. We're meant to have some sort of silence in between to balance that out, because otherwise it's nonstop, overwhelming, and then you just keep overwhelming. But you're overwhelmed by all the input. The brain responds as if it would to a life-threatening situation, or emotion or trauma, because you're usually triggered. You're triggered by an emotion. It's usually an emotion and trauma that enters you into this fight, flight, or freeze mode. And you're either going to do one of three, or you're going to do all of them. It doesn't matter. And the trick is to be aware of it and how to pull yourself out of it, which we'll get into. But this is something that happens consciously and unconsciously. It's just, we'll get into it here. The fight, flight, or freeze response, or stress response, is your body's natural reaction to danger. And even if it's not danger, your mind is interpreting that because it experienced something like that from the past or from the future. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. It's being, eventually you get aware. We'll get into that, but I'm so excited about this because it's going to help a lot of people. Okay, I'll get to that later. The world, when you're under, so consider how an animal behaves in the world, okay? So when you're under attack by a predator with limited options, it can, I lost my spot. It can flight for its life, which is run away. Sorry, I said it wrong. It can fight for its life. It can run away, which is flight, or freeze, in hope it's not seen, or, not having to face something or even deal with it. If you're sent into fight or flight mode, your body will prepare for action in some way, shape, or form. Your heart rate and breathing will increase. This is a natural thing that happens, delivering more oxygen to large muscle groups. You need to fight or run. So you're feeling, either tenseness, like it's drawing in, and it's like you just gotta, you're waiting for that. Like it does many different things, contracting and restricting. Also, before I continue, blood sugar, blood pressure is affected, seizure-like blackout symptoms you would have, pressure and raw emotion, and body goes into shock. But your hands and feet may get cold as blood is diverted. Your skin may get sweaty or pale. This unconscious decision occurs almost immediately, instantly. just like you'd leap out of the way of an out-of-control vehicle before you've completely processed what's happened or happening. Conversely, it means you also need to work hard to control the response. And this is where people don't put so much time and effort into, because it requires you to look directly at what's going on. And we'll get into that too. Obviously, if sensory overload is making you feel the same as you would if you were attacked by a predator, you won't be feeling good. You'll feel unsafe. You'll feel fearful, panicky, sweaty, pale, shaky. These feelings and symptoms can take up to half an hour or more, depending, how your state of being is and how much you're willing to feel what's going on, to really move past it. Because a lot of us hold on to so much. There's just so much there, depending on the verity of your life or traumas. It could be up to hours or days for some. But it's usually like the big emotions will subside first, but then you'll have the after effects where you're still feeling, you're still processing, basically, just putting pieces together. But this process can be sped up for some by calming or down-regulating practices such as deep breathing, meditation, hand-on-heart exercises, etc. And I have found that, again, being aware of the emotions, and we'll get into the techniques that you can use, but just being aware of them each time helps you into the next time. It makes it easier. Symptoms. In addition to the above signs of a fight or flight response, someone experiencing sensory overload might experience anxiety or feelings of overexcitement. You can also just be overstimulated if, your psychic centers are, just overly open. And, it's not a bad thing, but you just have to be aware of that. And it's because you're not only feeling yours, but you're feeling everything around you. So that's something to be aware of as well. Same with the rest of the symptoms, but irritability, stress, fear, panic, physical discomfort, restlessness, inability to relax, a strong urge to block some of the input by removing yourself from the situation or covering of your eyes or ears. And by this is where we're not just blocking what the problem is, what the trigger is. That's what most people want to do in these situations. They want to cover the ear. They don't want to hear, or maybe they do recognize it, but they don't want to truly, or maybe they just see it, but they don't want to hear it. Because that would entail that they would actually have to open up to, facing what's going on. And with that, I feel like there's it's a rational fear, like a human fear of the unknown, not knowing, like you're going to hear something that you don't want to hear. And it's usually like a back in the subconscious, like we don't like to hear what's wrong with us, okay? We don't want to think everything is our fault, and it's not, but we need to be aware of some of the things that we do or the patterns, and we also need to be aware of everything that is going on around us, okay? One second. It's like sometimes it makes the body sick, or you feel these negative feelings when you have to look back at past things or instances. It makes us feel uncomfortable, but it's something that needs to come to the surface, to be processed, to be filtered through. Otherwise, it just sits there. I know it's uncomfortable, but in children, sensory overload can present as meltdowns or tantrums and be mistaken for misbehavior. And this is for adults too. I don't care what you know, what people say. It's in adults too, because we're still healing these children issues that we never were able to move it past, you know, down the line. So you're still dealing with it in adulthood, and it can look as these same things that children do. So next part.